This video is brought to you by ncix.com. Great technology, selection, and service. Hey guys, Dmitry here with Hardware Canucks, and the Razer Blade Pro 17 is one of those machines that's supposed to make sense for professionals that rely on this amazing blade form factor of a computer, but with a larger 17-inch display and the hardware to match our growing demands for mobile power. The new Blade Pro 17 hits a whopping $3,000 that is really difficult to swallow considering the Blade 14 exists, that is a cheaper and a more powerful machine, and I think Razer should have done a bit more with this machine to make it actually competitive, not just within the notebook sphere, but for Razer to offer flexible options. But without any further ado, let's see what it's got going for it. So hardware-wise, you're getting a quad-core i7-4720HQ with turbo up to 3.6 GHz, 16 gigs of RAM, an NVIDIA GTX 960M video card with 4 gigs of VRAM, a 128GB SSD along with a 500GB hard drive, and an 802.11 AC Wi-Fi with Bluetooth 4.0. Now, the major disappointment here is the GPU for the price. We were expecting a 980M for a machine of this caliber, and having only 128GB SSD is again a punch in the stomach for $3,000. Now, what's even a bigger question mark is the display Razer has decided to include here. It is a 17.3-inch 1920 by 1080p TN panel. Razer's own Blade 14 sports an IGZO 3K display, so despite the lower resolution, viewing angles on the Blade Pro are just horrible, with a varying contrast shift that's not pleasing to view. And here's a comparison to an IPS display from a machine literally half the price. It's really a joke that Razer is marketing this for professional use. But let's lighten up the atmosphere a little bit and talk about what is good about the machine, so the form factor and the build quality. The entire frame is made out of anodized aluminum that looks and feels gorgeous with illuminated Razer logo on the lid. This is by far one of the best built machines, period, following in the footsteps of a MacBook. The black is gorgeous, but it is a huge fingerprint magnet. It is very thin at 22.4mm and doesn't weigh too much either at only 3 kilos. Surprisingly, the included power brick was not huge. This is awesome for travel. Don't need to spare much room in the backpack. And here's a nice comparison to an HTC One. However, when the laptop is plugged in, we noticed a coil whine, which was very annoying, especially if you are in a silent environment. Opening and closing the lid gives off a very satisfying feel without any flex on the lid, and since it's made out of premium material, the weight distribution is on point, which means you can open the lid with just one hand without tipping over the entire machine. And we also have these rubber edges on the screen that prevents dust and particles from entering the laptop, an important element in proper physical hygiene. Taking a physical tour of the I/O, you'll find the power input, Gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 1.4a that supports 4K output at 60 Hz, 3 USB 3.0 ports, and a 3.5mm headphone and microphone combo jack. We would like to see them separated in future revisions. The cooling vents are in symmetry, running along the top of each side, but I'm a little skeptical about the I/O placement because on the right side there's only a Kensington lock that will make the left side of the Blade Pro really busy with inputs. Also, seeing the DisplayPort output would have been ideal to diversify your display output options. Opening the Blade Pro 17, we have the power button that looks unique and it's quite stunning. The engraved logo pulses green when the machine is turned on. The speaker grill sits right in front of the power button with direct sound projection for the user. It's pretty loud with good treble, but lacks body in the bass region. Let's take a listen. And moving on, the slightly indented backlit keyboard feels really premium. Razer certainly has not skipped on the build quality elements of this machine. The typing experience is really excellent, and I love how responsive they are with outstandingly fast rebound, and the keycaps also are built of aluminum. The trackpad is placed right beside the keyboard on the right, and Razer decided to step up the tracking experience with something unique. It does require a bit of muscle memory though, as many times I would bring my hand underneath the middle of the keyboard expecting to find the trackpad there, but they have incorporated an LCD touchscreen with the extra intuitive user interface that they call the Switchblade UI. Basically, you have 10 physical buttons right above the screen that are specifically dedicated to perform certain functions. We have our traditional trackpad feature, then we have the dedicated number pad, along with some important settings that pop up on the buttons themselves. The macro buttons allow you to program keys to your preferred button combinations, might be useful for gaming or actually for productivity applications as well. The gaming mode button will disable the Windows key. The dedicated web browser is certainly not as responsive as it should be, something no one ever should use. The YouTube app is pretty basic, that allows you to watch content on the 480p screen, but since YouTube and Razer have not updated their player, we've experienced issues with playback that does not actually allow us to view any of the videos. The Facebook and Twitter app are pretty straightforward, but it's clear that the development emphasis is lacking here, and using these apps on the touchscreen will yield unsatisfactory and play out gimmicky, and same goes for the Gmail app that clearly needs an update, as the text is way too small, it's difficult, and it's all slow to navigate through. The trackpad itself though is great with a glass coating that allows smooth navigation. There is some attractive design elements built in, like the muted Razer logo underneath, and as you trace your fingers across the screen, a little green afterglow follows, and the left and right click below the touchscreen could offer better registration, and just the position of the trackpad on the right side of the keyboard makes the buttons kind of awkward to use. But let's shift gears and talk about performance, thermals, and the noise. So Eber, take it away.
Alright, so reviewing the thermal footage, you can clearly see the Blade Pro 17 has one major hotspot on the right side of the keyboard, right beside the trackpad. The heat is noticeable throughout the chassis, and when typing, transferring the heat onto your hands, so be prepared for the warmth. Also notice the two jet streams of hot air exiting through the exhaust ports on each side. The left side is not as noticeable as the right, because if you're using a mouse, your fingertips might be right in the area of the exhaust, and again, something to be cautious about. Rear-facing exhaust would have been more ideal. Idle temperatures are okay with 58 and 43 degrees Celsius on the CPU and GPU respectively, with high 80s during load, and a more efficient cooling system may be in order to fix the heat output. Jumping onto gaming, and the 960M with 4 gigs of vRAM is not for ultra or even very high settings. Compared to the rest of the mobile 900 series GPUs, the 960M is struggling to keep up with adequate frame rates, hovering around the 30 FPS mark on most of the titles, but with really low minimums that will require you to lower in-game settings to medium for better experience. And so the Razer Blade Pro 17 for professional use makes no sense because of the TN panel, and the viewing angles are just not to par for what you should expect, plus featuring only a 960M feels limiting for the price, as gaming performance is poor. The built-in apps on the touchpad is a neat idea, but the slow performance and inconvenient usage makes it practically useless. The cooling system is loud, and the heat makes its way into a larger portion of the keyboard. Really, the strongest part about this machine is the form factor. The entire Blade lineup makes a confident statement in the build quality department, but with the Blade 14 out, the 17-inch variant is a hard sell regardless of the larger form factor. We need to see redesigned cooling vents, a 3K IPS display, and a GTX 980M for us to consider the investment even remotely worth it. As of right now, the new Blade Pro 17 is a machine to avoid. And that concludes our review. Make sure to subscribe for more similar content. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.